Day one of NFL free agency is officially in the books. The New Orleans Saints were somewhat active. I think I kind of expected them to be a little more active, especially after it was reported that the reason they decided to restructure Derek Carr and bring him back was because so that they could be more active in free agency this year than they were last year. Because reports were saying that Derek Carr was more than willing to test the market and part ways with the New Orleans Saints. In fact, he wanted to do that, but it was the New Orleans Saints that wanted to keep him around for whatever reason. So, with that being said, I figured with them restructuring him, maybe they'll take a swing at a couple of higher or bigger names, and it seems like they did. But per usual, it just did not work out. So, first thing this morning, well, yesterday morning, woke up to the news that they traded for Devon Godchaux. Now, this is a guy who has been primarily run stopper throughout his entire career, coming over from the New England Patriots, Miami Dolphins before that. Like I said, this guy is one of those guys that you bring in when you know the offense is going to run the ball. He'll be a rotational piece for the New Orleans Saints defense. And I really like this trade because you're giving up a seventh round pick. And when you seventh round picks are just like you could either strike gold or strike nothing, right? And in this case, you're giving up a seventh round pick for a guy who has proven that he can give you quality reps in the NFL. And this is a guy that fits the mold of what Brandon Staley wants in a one technique, big body defensive lineman who could really eat up double teams and hopefully get in the backfield to make some tackles in the run game. And Lord knows the Saints need help when it comes to the run defense. They have been pretty bad the last couple of years. So, really big fan of the Devon Godchaux trade. Now, again, it's not like a huge name and it's not like a splash move, but it is a move that I like. He is 30 years old, so he's probably on the back end of his career. I think last year he had somewhat of a down year, but the Patriots were a mess in total last year. So hopefully he can pick things back up and help that Saints run defense because they definitely need it. Probably the biggest news of the day was the Saints re signing Chase Young. Of course, last year Chase Young came over from the 49ers. He signed a 1 year sort of prove it deal with the Saints. And I guess in the New Orleans Saints front office's eyes, he did enough to prove that he is worth a bigger deal. He's going to be making about $17 million per year, which puts him in that top 20 edge rusher category in terms of average money per year. And look, this is a deal that could either go it's either going to end up being a bargain or it's going to end up being an overpay. Chase Young is a guy who really, if we're being completely honest, has lived off of name value alone or made his money off of name value alone the last couple of years, few years, because the production really isn't there. The sack numbers really isn't there. But everybody's still hoping that maybe he can be that guy that he was at Ohio State and the guy that he's shown flashes to be in his career. Like, don't get me wrong, he has shown flashes of brilliance. He did so with the Saints last year. He led the league in, or he led the team in pressures and was one of the top players in the league in terms of total pressures. But most of the time, like pressures are nice, but we got to convert those into sacks because we know sacks, quarterback hits are what really changes the course of a game. So he had a bunch of pressures last year. Hopefully, he can turn those into sacks next year. And for me, Chase Young, just watching him on film, even back to his Washington days, it's always just been an effort thing with him, it seems like. There are plays that you watch him and it just looks like he kinda just stands up, goes through the motions, and just hopes that the play will end soon so that he can get to the next one, so it's to me, it's been more of an effort thing rather than a skill thing with Chase Young, but hopefully Brandon Staley and that new defensive staff can get him going and maybe get those sack numbers bumped up a little bit with this new, uh decently sized contract, so congratulations to Chase Young. The Saints also extended defensive tackle Nathan Shepard on a 1 year deal. Again, another rotational guy that'll come in, rotate snaps with Godchaux, with Colin Saunders along there on the defensive line. He's made some splash plays for the Saints over the last couple of years. Again, nothing huge, just a rotational player that can, contribute when needed, I guess. It's also being reported that the Saints really made a strong push to sign Travarius Ward, formerly with the San Francisco 49ers, a cornerback, but he opted to sign with the Indianapolis Colts instead. This is a familiar story. The Saints made a strong push, wasn't strong enough, and a high name player plays elsewhere or picks elsewhere. This one, I'm not too messed up about it. Now, Ward is a really good football player, but he is 29 years old, and you just never know when those cornerbacks are going to kind of hit that wall and start to decline. And so I fully expect with them missing out on Ward, them to draft a cornerback because right now that room is looking pretty thin. You got Kool-Aid, Alante Taylor, Paulson Adebo just signed with the Giants. I thought that, they had a chance to bring him back, but it didn't work out. But so Ward chooses the Colts over the Saints. It is what it is. I expect the Saints to be active in adding one of them in the draft for sure. It's also being reported by Nick Underhill that the Saints are interested in bringing Lucas Patrick back. He was their left guard last year. Was hurt a few games, kind of just rotated in and out when he was in there. But they're interested in bringing him back because right now they really don't have a starting left guard on the roster. So if they bring him back, that's a name that will probably be in the mix to compete for a starting role. But it was also reported that he was kind of just keeping his options open and seeing if there was any interest elsewhere at that point. Another thing that was reported, this was by Albert Breer in the MMQB, it's that the Saints are interested in bringing Brandon Cooks back. They want to maybe possibly bring Brandon Cooks home, which I guess at this point in his career, he's definitely on the back end, but he could provide some solid depth. And no, because at the end of the day, you'd rather have Brandon Cooks catching passes than whoever in the world that the Saints had last year on their football field catching passes. So day one, that's really it. All the big name free agents went elsewhere. You had like Hufanga and Drake Greenlaw to the Broncos, Ward to the Colts. You had Devontae Adams go to the Rams. The NFL has just been an absolute crazy, insane. It had an insane couple of days. DK Metcalf traded to the Steelers, Geno to the Raiders, Sam Darnold to the Seahawks. It's just like next year is going to be wild. It's going to be. It seems like well, it does happen every year in free agency, but this year it just seems like the last couple of days have just been like hard to keep up with all of the news. So Saints, no big name splashes. I'm sure they'll be active here in day two, which is today, for some guys that are looked at as more depth players. But with them not really making any big moves in day one, the good part of that is they save money. They need to do that right to get more into a realistic cap situation for the years to come. So I'm not mad at that, but it also tells me that they're going to be really focusing heavily on the upcoming NFL draft to kind of get things going and to start building this team up. So appreciate you guys watching. Peace.